The forbidden wing of the Han estate was never supposed to be cleaned. Park Eliza had been told this on her first day, standing in the marble foyer with her cleaning supplies clutched in trembling hands. The head housekeeper's warning had been clear. The third-floor library is off-limits. Mr. Han values his privacy above all else. Translation: enter that room and disappear like the last maid who'd broken the rules. But today, the head housekeeper was gone. The entire staff had been dismissed for a family meeting, some tense gathering of the Han syndicate that had every surface in the mansion gleaming with anxiety. Eliza was alone with her mop bucket and a stack of rooms that desperately needed attention before the brothers returned. She shouldn't have gone near the library. If this story already has you hooked, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Mafia Moonlight Tales, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Drop a comment below telling me what you would do if you discovered a mafia boss's darkest secret. Now back to Eliza's story. The library door creaked open under her touch, revealing floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound books that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light filtering through heavy curtains. The room smelled of old paper and expensive cologne, a scent she'd come to associate with Han Tae-sung himself, the butcher of Seoul, the cold-eyed heir who never smiled and whose mere presence made grown men flinch. Eliza worked quickly, her duster moving across mahogany surfaces with practiced efficiency. Don't linger, don't look, don't think about the rumors of what happens in the basement of this estate. Then her duster caught on something. A book jutting out slightly from the others. The Little Prince, the spine red in faded gold lettering. She moved to push it back into place, but instead of sliding in, the book clicked. The sound echoed through the silent library like a gunshot. Eliza's heart stopped. The entire bookshelf shuddered, then began to swing inward with a mechanical groan, revealing a darkness beyond that seemed to breathe. A hidden door, a secret room, in the home of Seoul's most dangerous man. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to close the door, to forget what she'd seen. This was how maids ended up at the bottom of the Han River. This was the kind of discovery that turned witnesses into headlines. But something else drew her forward, a sound, soft and haunting, drifting from the darkness beyond the threshold. A lullaby. Eliza's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone, using its flashlight to pierce the shadows. The beam caught something pink, then yellow, then a riot of hand-painted murals blooming across the walls like flowers in a midnight garden. She stepped inside. The room beyond was nothing like she'd expected. No torture equipment, no evidence lockers filled with horrors, no blood-stained concrete or weapons cache. Instead, she found herself standing in the most beautiful nursery she'd ever seen. Soft carpet in pale cream, a white crib with gauzy curtains that stirred in some unseen draught, shelves lined with pristine toys that had never been played with, and covering every wall, someone had painted an enchanted forest in meticulous detail, rabbits and deer peeking from behind trees, stars twinkling in a perpetual twilight, a little girl in a yellow dress dancing in a meadow of impossible flowers. The lullaby played from a music box on the dresser, the mechanism turning endlessly, faithfully, as though waiting for someone who would never come. Eliza's throat tightened. She'd expected to find evidence of the monster. Instead, she'd found proof of his humanity, and somehow that was infinitely more terrifying. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from behind her, low and deadly calm. Eliza spun around, her phone clattering to the floor. Han Tae-sung stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the library's light. He was still wearing his black suit from the family meeting, but his tie was loosened, and something in his expression was so raw, so exposed, that she couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment she died. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears already streaming down her face. "I didn't mean to, I swear I'll never tell anyone, please." Her name was Minar. His voice cut through her panic like a blade. She was 4 years old when they took her from me. Eliza stared at him, confusion momentarily overriding her terror. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was just standing there, looking past her at the painted walls with an expression of such devastating grief that she felt it in her own chest. "The rival family," he continued, his tone now completely empty. "They wanted to send a message about what happens when you refuse their alliance, so they sent her back to me in pieces." "Oh God," Eliza breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. Sung's dark eyes finally focused on her, and she saw something flicker there. Not rage, not the cold calculation she'd seen from a distance when he conducted business in his office, something older and more painful. Recognition of her tears, of her genuine horror at what he'd lost. "You should be terrified of me," he said quietly. "Every other person who stumbled onto my secrets has been smart enough to be terrified." "I am terrified," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But I'm so sorry. No one should lose their child like that, no one." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the music box's eternal lullaby. Then Han Sung did something that would change both their lives forever. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small golden key, the metal gleaming in the nursery's soft light. He stepped forward and placed it in Eliza's trembling hand, his fingers cold against her skin. What is this?" she whispered. "The key to this room," he said. "You're the only person besides me who's seen it in 3 years. You're the only one who's ever cried for her." "I don't understand." His jaw tightened. "The penalty for discovering my secrets is usually death, Miss Park, but I'm going to offer you something different, a choice." Eliza's fingers closed around the key, its edges biting into her palm. "Keep the room clean," Sung continued, his voice carefully controlled. "Care for it the way she deserved to be cared for, and in return I'll make sure you and your family never worry about money again. You'll be under my protection, untouchable." "And if I refuse?" Something flickered across his face, almost like respect. "Then you walk out of here tonight and never speak of this again. I'll honor that. But you'll also go back to your life of debt and struggle, and the next time the loan sharks come for your mother, I won't be there to stop them." It wasn't really a choice at all, they both knew it. But as Eliza looked into the eyes of the Butcher of Seoul and saw the father grieving beneath the monster's mask, she realized that maybe this strange, impossible arrangement was exactly what they both needed. "I'll do it," she whispered. "I'll help you keep her memory alive." For the first time since she'd started working at the Han estate, Sung's expression softened, not quite a smile but something close to it. "Then welcome to the secret, Park Eliza. Try not to let it kill you." As he turned to leave, Eliza stood in the nursery with the golden key burning in her hand, the lullaby playing on, and the terrible understanding that she'd just become the confidant of Seoul's most dangerous man. She had no idea yet that this key would unlock far more than just a room. It would unlock the truth about the Han family's darkest secrets, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power, and the carefully guarded heart of a man who'd forgotten how to feel anything but rage. But most importantly, it would unlock her own courage to transform a monument to death into a sanctuary for life. The real question was whether they'd both survive long enough to see it happen. The golden key felt impossibly heavy in Eliza's palm as Sung's footsteps faded down the hallway, leaving her alone in the nursery with only the music box's lullaby for company. Her legs finally gave out, and she sank onto the plush carpet, her entire body shaking with the adrenaline crash of a woman who just stared death in the face and somehow walked away. She should leave, lock the door, pocket the key, and pretend this night had never happened. Go back to her tiny room in the servants' quarters and wake up tomorrow to the same routine of invisible labor that had defined her existence for the past 6 months. But she couldn't move. Her eyes traced the painted murals again, seeing new details in the soft glow of her phone's light, tiny butterflies hidden in the flowers. A crescent moon with a sleeping face, and there, barely visible in the corner, a signature, "For my Minar with all my love, Appa." "Appa, Daddy." The Butcher of Seoul had painted this room himself. Eliza's fingers brushed against the carpet, and she realized it had been recently vacuumed. The toys on the shelves were dust-free, arranged with precise care. The crib's bedding was fresh, the subtle scent of lavender detergent still clinging to the fabric. He'd been maintaining this room personally, coming here in secret, probably late at night when the household staff was asleep, to clean and preserve this shrine to his lost daughter. A monster wouldn't do that. A monster wouldn't have handed her a key instead of a bullet. The music box wound down, its final notes hanging in the air like a question. Eliza stood on trembling legs and crossed to the dresser, gently turning the small brass mechanism to restart the lullaby. As the melody began again, she noticed a photograph tucked beneath the music box's base. She shouldn't look, This was already too much, too intimate, too dangerous. But her fingers were already lifting the frame. The little girl in the photo had Taesung's dark eyes and his serious expression, but her smile was pure sunshine. She wore the same yellow dress from the mural, her small hands clutching a stuffed rabbit. And beside her, barely visible at the edge of the frame, was a man's hand resting gently on her shoulder. A father's hand. Eliza carefully replaced the photograph, her vision blurring with fresh tears. She understood now why he'd spared her. It wasn't mercy, not really. It was something more desperate than that. He'd given her the key because he couldn't bear this burden alone anymore. Because grief, when carried in absolute silence, becomes its own kind of death. "I'll keep it clean," she whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of the little girl dancing in the painted meadow, to the broken man who'd somehow trusted her with his most devastating secret. "I promise." The lullaby played on as Eliza locked the door behind her, the golden key now hanging on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her uniform. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just signed an unspoken contract written in shared sorrow and dangerous trust, the kind of contract that would either save them both or destroy everything they had left. In the Han estate, mercy always came with a price. Eliza had just agreed to pay it. 3 nights after receiving the key, Eliza found herself unable to sleep. The servants' quarters were quiet except for the soft snoring of the other maids, but her mind kept returning to the nursery on the forbidden floor, to the painted forest and the lullaby that seemed to echo in her dreams. She told herself she was going to check the room, to fulfill the strange duty Taesung had given her, but the truth was something deeper, something she didn't want to examine too closely. She needed to understand the man who'd spared her life. The mansion was dark as she climbed the stairs, her bare feet silent on the marble. She'd learned the security patterns by now, knew which hallways the night guards patrolled and when. The 3rd-floor library was exactly as she'd left it, the secret door sealed tight behind its camouflage of books. Eliza pressed her hand against the little prince, and the mechanism clicked softly. But this time golden light spilled from the opening, and this time she wasn't alone. Taesung sat on the floor beside the crib, his back against the wall, still wearing his dress shirt though his jacket and tie had been discarded. His eyes were closed, and for a moment Eliza thought he might be asleep. Then she saw the photograph clutched in his hands, the same one she'd discovered beneath the music box. She should leave, this was too private, too raw. But something kept her frozen in the doorway. Watching the most feared man in Seoul hold a picture of his daughter like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. Her favorite color was yellow, Taesung said quietly, not opening his eyes. Like sunlight, she said it made her happy. Eliza's breath caught, he'd known she was there. She loved stories, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Fairy tales where the princess was brave and the dragons weren't always evil. She used to say she'd grow up to be a dragon tamer, not a princess who needed saving. "She sounds remarkable," Eliza managed, her own voice thick with emotion. Taesung's eyes finally opened, meeting hers across the nursery. In the soft light he looked younger than his 32 years, vulnerable, human. "I read to her every night, right there in that chair." He nodded toward the rocking chair near the window. "The Little Prince was her favorite. She made me read it so many times I memorized it." That's why the book triggered the door. The realization hit Eliza like a wave. "The men who took her," Taesung continued, his jaw tightening, "they didn't do it for money or territory. They did it to teach me that love is a weakness, that caring about anything makes you vulnerable." "They were wrong," Eliza whispered. His laugh was bitter and broken. "Were they? She died because I loved her, because I couldn't hide what she meant to me." "No," Eliza stepped fully into the room, surprising herself with her boldness. "She died because evil people exist, not because you loved her." Taesung stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he stood, carefully placing the photograph back beneath the music box. "I come here every night," he admitted. "Have for 3 years. Sometimes I talk to her, tell her about my day, apologize for failing to protect her." He paused at the doorway, his back to Eliza. "The household thinks I work late in my office. They don't know I'm really here keeping vigil for a ghost." As he disappeared into the library, Eliza remained in the nursery, finally understanding the full weight of the key around her neck. She wasn't just maintaining a room. She was sharing the burden of a father's eternal grief. Eliza bought the flowers with her own money from the market in Itaewon, choosing yellow roses because she remembered what Taesung had said about Minar's favourite colour. The vendor had looked at her strangely when she'd spent nearly an hour selecting the perfect blooms, but Eliza didn't care. This felt important in a way she couldn't quite articulate. She waited until evening, when the household staff was busy preparing dinner and Taesung was locked in meetings with his brothers in the East Wing. The nursery welcomed her like always, the music box playing its eternal lullaby, the painted forest watching with silent approval. Eliza had cleaned the room twice since that first night, but she'd never added anything to it. It felt presumptuous, like altering someone else's sacred space. But as she arranged the yellow roses in a crystal vase she'd found in the storage room, something inside her insisted this was right. Minar would have loved fresh flowers. She was adjusting the last rose when she heard the click of the secret door. Taesung stood in the entrance, still wearing his meeting suit, his expression unreadable. Eliza's heart hammered as she waited for him to tell her she'd overstepped, that she'd violated some unspoken rule of their arrangement. Instead, he stared at the flowers. "Yellow roses," he said finally, his voice strange, soft. "I thought," Eliza twisted her hands nervously, "I thought she might like them, but if it's inappropriate I can remove." She would have loved them. Taesung crossed to the vase, his fingers hovering over the petals without quite touching them. Her mother used to keep yellow roses in the house, before. Before, the word hung heavy with unspoken history. "I didn't know she had a mother," Eliza said carefully. "Cancer when Minar was 2, Taesung's jaw tightened. "I became both parents after that, or tried to be." He pulled out the rocking chair and sat down, the wood creaking softly under his weight. It was the first time Eliza had seen him actually use the furniture in the room, and something about the gesture felt monumentally significant. "Tell me something, Miss Park," he said, leaning back with his eyes closed. "Why do you work here, in this house? You're clearly educated. You could find easier employment elsewhere." The question caught her off guard. In 6 months he'd never asked her anything personal. "My mother," Eliza admitted, sitting on the carpet near the crib. "She has medical bills, diabetes complications. The salary here is 3 times what I could make anywhere else, and you provide housing." It seemed like the logical choice. "So you're sacrificing yourself for someone you love?" Taesung's eyes opened, finding hers. "That's either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both." Something unexpected happened then. The corner of Taesung's mouth lifted just slightly, not quite a smile but the ghost of one. The expression transformed his face, softening the hard edges that usually made him look carved from stone. "Minar would have liked you," he said quietly. "You have her stubbornness, her kindness." Eliza felt her throat tighten. "I wish I could have met her." "So do I." Taesung stood, pausing beside the vase of yellow roses. His hand finally touched one of the petals, so gently it barely moved. "Thank you, Miss Park, for the flowers, for understanding what this room needs." As he left, Eliza remained on the carpet, her chest full of something warm and terrifying. She'd just seen Han Taesung almost smile, and somehow that felt more dangerous than any secret she'd ever kept. Eliza was carrying fresh linens down the 3rd-floor corridor when a hand shot out from the shadows, fingers closing around her wrist like a vice. "Going somewhere interesting, little maid?" Han Jogi materialized from the alcove near the library, his smile sharp as broken glass. Taesung's younger brother had the same dark eyes and aristocratic features, but where Taesung's face was carved ice, Jogi's held a different kind of danger, the gleeful cruelty of a man who enjoyed watching things break. "Just delivering linens, sir," Eliza said, keeping her voice steady even as her pulse hammered against his grip. The key hung beneath her uniform, suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Linens," Jogi's thumb pressed against her wrist, finding her racing heartbeat. "To the 3rd floor, the forbidden floor, how peculiar." "The head housekeeper assigned me." "The head housekeeper is in Busan visiting her sister." His smile widened. "I checked, so who really sent you up here, Miss Park? Or should I ask what you're really doing?" Eliza forced herself to meet his eyes, remembering something her mother had once told her. "Predators can smell fear." "I don't know what you mean, sir. I'm just doing my job." Jogi released her wrist only to trail his fingers up her arm, a gesture that made her skin crawl. You've been here 6 months and suddenly you're everywhere, cleaning rooms that were previously locked, disappearing for hours with no explanation, and my dear brother seems different lately, less focused. I haven't noticed anything different about Mr. Han. Liar, the word was soft, almost affectionate. I've been watching you, little maid, watching the way my brother looks at you when he thinks no one sees, the way you flinch whenever someone mentions the 3rd floor. Eliza's blood turned to ice. If Jogi discovered the nursery, if he learned about Minar's sanctuary, he'd use it as a weapon. The Han family was a nest of vipers, each brother constantly searching for leverage against the others. There's nothing between Mr. Han and me, she said firmly. I'm just a servant. Jogi leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. Then you won't mind if I search your quarters, make sure you're not stealing family secrets, or perhaps stealing something more valuable. That won't be necessary. The new voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Taesung stood at the top of the staircase, his expression utterly calm. But Eliza had learned to read the subtle signs of his fury, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hands hung loose at his sides ready. Jogi stepped back from Eliza immediately, his predatory smile never wavering. Brother, I was just getting acquainted with your staff. Miss Park has work to do. Taesung's eyes flicked to Eliza. The study needs attention, now. Eliza didn't need to be told twice. She gathered the linens and fled, but not before catching Jogi's parting words. You're getting soft, Hyung. Father would be disappointed. Father is dead, Taesung replied coldly, and you do well to remember that I'm the one who decides what happens in this house. Eliza's hands shook as she descended the stairs, the key burning against her chest. Jogi was hunting for something to use against his brother, and she just painted a target on her own back. The nursery wasn't just a secret anymore. It was ammunition in a war she'd never wanted to fight. The dress arrived in Eliza's quarters 3 days after the hallway incident, delivered in a garment bag that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe combined. Inside was a floor-length gown in deep emerald silk, elegant and understated, with a handwritten note in Taesung's precise script. You'll accompany me to the Shin Foundation Gala tonight, 7 p.m., non-negotiable. Eliza's hands trembled as she held the fabric. This was insane. Maids didn't attend galas, they served at them. But the head housekeeper appeared an hour later with a makeup artist and hairstylist in tow, both professionals who transformed Eliza with efficient precision. When she finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked sophisticated, confident, like someone who belonged in Taesung's world. The illusion shattered the moment she saw him waiting by the car. Taesung wore a black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped from the pages of a magazine, all sharp angles and controlled power. His eyes swept over her once, and something flickered in their depths before his mask of indifference returned. You look presentable, he said, which coming from him felt like a sonnet. Why am I really here? Eliza asked as the driver pulled away from the estate. Jogi has been asking questions, making calls. Taesung's jaw tightened. He thinks you're my weakness. If I leave you unprotected at the house, he'll make his move. So you're taking me to a gala full of criminals and socialites. I'm taking you somewhere I can watch you. He turned to face her fully. In my world, Miss Park, the safest place is often in plain sight. As my personal assistant, you're under my direct protection. Untouchable. The gala was held at the Schiller Hotel, a glittering affair where Seoul's elite mingled with dangerous men in expensive suits. Eliza recognized faces from news reports, politicians, CEOs, and underneath it all, the syndicate families who really ran the city. Taesung kept her close, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they navigated the crowd. She felt the stares, heard the whispers. The Butcher of Seoul had never brought a companion to these events before. Taesung SSI, a woman in diamonds, approached, her smile predatory. Who is this lovely creature? My personal assistant, Miss Park, Taesung replied smoothly. She manages my private affairs. The emphasis on private was deliberate, a warning wrapped in silk. But it was Jogi's arrival that turned the evening dangerous. He cut through the crowd like a shark, 2 syndicate elders flanking him, his eyes locked on Eliza with undisguised interest. Brother, Jogi said, ignoring Taesung entirely, your assistant is quite beautiful. I can see why you keep her so close. Miss Park's duties are none of your concern. Everything about this family is my concern. Jogi stepped closer to Eliza, invading her space. Tell me, Miss Park, what exactly do you assist my brother with? His schedule, his paperwork, or perhaps something more intimate? Eliza felt Taesung tense beside her, violence simmering beneath his controlled exterior. I manage Mr. Han's household operations, she said clearly, meeting Jogi's gaze. Nothing more, nothing less. Jogi's smile was poisonous. How disappointing, I was hoping you'd be more interesting. Taesung's hand tightened on Eliza's back. If you'll excuse us, we have other guests to greet. As they moved away, Eliza heard Jogi's soft laugh following them. This isn't over, she whispered. No, Taesung agreed, his voice dark. It's just beginning. Eliza found the locket while dusting the nursery's dresser, tucked behind the music box where it had probably rolled weeks or months ago. The silver was tarnished, the delicate chain broken, and when she carefully pried it open, her breath caught. Inside was a photograph of Minar, but this one was different from the framed picture. Here the little girl was mid-laugh, her eyes squeezed shut with pure joy, her hands reaching toward whoever held the camera. On the opposite side was a photo of Taesung, younger and unguarded, smiling in a way Eliza had never seen. Father and daughter, captured in a moment of uncomplicated happiness. The hinge was broken, the photo creased and torn at one corner. Eliza closed her fingers around the locket and made a decision. The jewelry repair shop in Itaewon was run by an elderly man who asked no questions when Eliza placed the broken locket on his counter. She paid with money she'd been saving for her mother's medication, watching as he examined the piece with expert eyes. This is quality work, he murmured. Old, the chain can be replaced, the hinge repaired, the photograph will need careful handling. How long? 3 days, maybe 4. Eliza worked extra shifts to cover the cost, her body exhausted but her mind focused on the image of Taesung's face when he'd see his daughter's locket restored. She told herself it was just part of maintaining the room, fulfilling her duty. But the truth was more complicated than that. When she returned to collect the locket, it gleamed like new. The chain was delicate silver, the hinge moved smoothly, and the photograph had been carefully preserved behind new glass. The repairman had even polished away years of tarnish. That night, Eliza waited in the nursery, the restored locket wrapped in soft cloth. She heard Taesung's footsteps at their usual time, watched him enter with the same exhausted expression he always wore. I found something, she said softly before he could speak. She held out the cloth and Taesung's entire body went still. His hands trembled, the first time she'd ever seen him shake, as he unwrapped the locket. The sound he made was barely human, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Where did you? His voice broke. I thought I'd lost this. After she died, I searched everywhere. It was behind the music box. The chain was broken, so it must have fallen. Eliza stepped back, giving him space. I had it repaired. I hope that was okay. Taesung opened the locket, staring at the photographs with an expression of such raw emotion that Eliza had to look away. This was grief too private, too sacred for witnesses. This was the last photo taken of us together, he whispered. 3 days before they took her, we'd gone to the park, she'd been chasing butterflies. He closed the locket carefully, then did something that stopped Eliza's heart. He fastened the chain around his neck, tucking the locket beneath his shirt where it would rest against his heart. How much did the repair cost? It doesn't matter. How much, Miss Park? 200,000 won. Taesung pulled out his wallet, but Eliza shook her head. It was a gift for Minar. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Trust, complete, absolute trust. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me back the only thing I have left of who I used to be. When he finally left, his hand unconsciously touched the locket through his shirt. Eliza remained in the nursery, knowing she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She wasn't just his employee anymore. She was becoming something far more dangerous, his ally in grief, his partner in remembering, his reason to feel human again. The summons came at midnight. Eliza was dragged from her quarters by 2 men in black suits, their grip bruising as they hauled her through the mansion's corridors. She didn't scream. The other maids had learned long ago that screaming in the Han estate only made things worse. They brought her to the grand hall, a cavernous room she'd only ever cleaned in daylight. Now it was filled with men in expensive suits, smoke curling from cigars, the air thick with power and menace. The Syndicate Council, the 5 family heads who controlled Seoul's underworld. Taesung stood at the center, his face a mask of ice, but Eliza saw the tension in his shoulders. Beside him, Jogi wore a smile that made her blood run cold. "Gentlemen," said Elder Choi, the oldest of the council members, his voice like gravel, "we've called this meeting to address concerns about our young hands' fitness to lead." "I've given you no reason to question my leadership," Taesung replied, his tone flat and dangerous. "Haven't you?" Jogi stepped forward, playing to the audience. "You've been distracted, brother. Soft. Some say you've been spending your nights in the company of a maid rather than managing family business." The councilmen's eyes shifted to Eliza, assessing her like merchandise. "Miss Park is my employee," Taesung said carefully. "Nothing more." "Really?" Jogi pulled out his phone, swiping to show photographs. Eliza's stomach dropped. They were surveillance shots, her entering the 3rd floor, Taesung's hand on her back at the gala, both of them in the nursery. "The nursery. Your brother has been sharing family secrets with hired help," Jogi announced triumphantly. "She knows about the forbidden room. She knows about the child. She's a liability." Elder Choi's expression darkened. "Is this true, Taesung?" The silence stretched like razor wire. "She cleans a room," Taesung said finally. "That's all." "Then you won't mind proving it?" Elder Park leaned forward, his rings catching the light. "In our world, sentiment is weakness. Loose ends must be cut. The girl knows too much." Eliza's heart stopped as Elder Choi slid a pistol across the polished table. "Dispose of her," the old man commanded. "Here, now, prove you're still your father's son." Taesung stared at the gun and Eliza watched something flicker across his face. Not fear, calculation. He was weighing options, measuring outcomes. "Well, brother," Jogi's smile was victorious. "Show us you're not the weak, sentimental fool I think you've become." Taesung picked up the gun with steady hands. He crossed to where Eliza knelt between her captors, the weapon hanging loose at his side. Their eyes met, and in his gaze she saw an apology, a goodbye, a promise. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so softly only she could hear. "Trust me." Then he raised the gun to her head. The councilmen leaned forward, hungry for violence. Jogi's smile widened. "Any last words, Miss Park?" Elder Choi asked mockingly. Eliza looked at Taesung. At the locket she knew hung beneath his shirt, and made her choice. "Minna wouldn't want this," she said clearly. Taesung's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot echoed like thunder through the hall. And everything went black. Eliza woke to the smell of salt water and gasoline, her head pounding like someone had cracked her skull open. She was moving, no, being carried, strong arms holding her against a chest that rose and fell with labored breathing. "Stay quiet," Taesung's voice cut through the fog. "We're not clear yet." Memory crashed back, the gun, the shot, the councilmen's satisfied faces as she'd collapsed. "You shot me," she gasped. "I shot the guard behind you." His grip tightened as he navigated what felt like a dock. "Blank in your direction, live round at the man who was about to actually kill you. Old magic trick, misdirection." Eliza's mind reeled. The blood. "Squib pack under your shirt. I had Kyung-soo plant it during the gala." Taesung's voice was strained. "You think I'd let them murder you in my own house?" They reached a boat, sleek and fast, its engine already running. Kyung-soo stood at the helm, his expression grim as he helped Taesung lower Eliza onto the deck. "They'll realize she's gone within the hour," Kyung-soo reported. "Maybe less if Jogi checks the body himself." "Then we move now." Taesung pulled a bag from the cabin, tossing Eliza fresh clothes. "Change, fast, we have maybe 10 minutes before this dock becomes a killing floor." "Where are we going?" Eliza's hands shook as she struggled with the zipper. "Anywhere but here." Taesung met her eyes and she saw something she'd never seen before in his face. Fear, not for himself but for her. "I just declared war on every family in Seoul. There's no going back from this." The boat roared to life, cutting through dark water toward the open sea. Behind them, the Han estate's lights blazed against the night sky, a fortress Eliza had called home for 6 months, now transformed into a prison she'd never see again. They were 20 minutes out when headlights appeared on the coastal road, multiple vehicles converging on their position. "They found us," Kyung-soo said flatly. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off the water. Tae-sung shoved Eliza down, his body covering hers as he returned fire with a pistol that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "The bridge ahead," Kyung-soo shouted over the chaos. "If we can reach it." An explosion rocked the boat, sending them careening sideways. Eliza screamed as water rushed over the deck, cold and merciless. Tae-sung's hand found hers in the chaos. "Can you swim?" "What? The boat's taking on water, we have to jump." Another explosion, closer this time. The Han family wasn't trying to capture them anymore, they were trying to erase the embarrassment entirely. "On three," Tae-sung said, pulling Eliza to the railing. Behind them, Kyung-soo steered the dying boat toward their pursuers, a final act of loyalty. "Boss," Kyung-soo called, "it's been an honor." "Kyung-soo, no." "Three." They hit the freezing water as the boat exploded behind them, a fireball that turned night into day. Eliza's lungs burned, her dress dragging her down, but Tae-sung's grip never faltered. They surfaced together, gasping and alive, as debris rained around them and the sounds of pursuit faded into shocked silence. The Butcher of Seoul was dead, as far as the syndicate knew. And Park Eliza had died with him. Now they just had to figure out how to live. 4 years later, the house on the coast bore no resemblance to the Han estate's oppressive fortress. Eliza stood in the garden, her hands dirty from planting yellow roses along the white fence, watching as a group of children played tag across the lawn. Their laughter echoed off the ocean breeze, pure and unself-conscious, the kind of sound that still made her chest tight with gratitude. 12 children called this place home now. Orphans, runaways, kids the system had failed or forgotten. The eldest was 15, the youngest barely 4. Each one had arrived broken in their own way, and each one was slowly learning that home didn't have to mean fear. "Miss Eliza," 7-year-old Jaiwoo ran up, her pigtails bouncing. "Mr. T says lunch is ready and he made your favorite." Eliza smiled, wiping soil from her hands. "Does he now, let me guess, Paejeon? With extra green onions, just like you like it." The house's back door opened, and Tae-sung emerged carrying a tray of food, an apron tied around his waist that read "World's Okayest Cook." A birthday gift from the kids that he'd initially protested, but now wore without complaint. He looked different from the man who'd once ruled Seoul's underworld. His hair was longer, touched with grey at the temples. Laugh lines had replaced the permanent tension around his eyes. He wore simple clothes, jeans and a cotton shirt, and moved with an ease that 4 years ago would have been unthinkable. "Lunch is served," he announced, and the children swarmed like happy locusts, chattering and jostling for position at the outdoor table. Eliza caught his eye across the chaos, and he smiled. The real smile, the one she'd spent months coaxing out of him during those first terrifying days after they'd washed ashore. The smile that had been buried for years beneath grief and violence. After the children were settled and eating, Tae-sung found Eliza in the garden, now quiet except for the sound of waves against the distant rocks. "You planted more roses," he observed, kneeling beside her work. "Yellow ones, always yellow ones," she didn't have to explain why. His hand found the locket beneath his shirt, a habit he'd never broken, but now when he touched it his expression wasn't just grief, it was remembrance mixed with peace. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about expanding. The old warehouse property down the coast, we could convert it, take in more children." "With what money? We're barely managing as is." "I still have accounts the family doesn't know about, legitimate investments I made years ago." He paused. "Blood money originally, but maybe it can be redeemed." Eliza studied his face, seeing the man he'd become, not the Butcher of Seoul, not the broken father haunting a nursery, something entirely new. "She'd be proud of you," Eliza said softly, "Minna, of what you've built here." Tae-sung's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "We built it, you and me." From the table, Jaiwoo called out, "Mr. T, Sang-min took my dumpling." "Did not." "Did too." Tae-sung stood, offering Eliza his hand. "Duty calls." She took it, their fingers intertwining naturally, and together they returned to the chaos of their beautiful, imperfect family. The nursery had been a shrine to the past, preserved in amber and grief. This house was something far more powerful, a living monument to the future, where children who'd lost everything could learn that love wasn't weakness. It was the only thing strong enough to break the cycle of violence. That evening, after the children were in bed, Eliza and Taesung sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, "giving up everything?" Taesung was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. "I gave up nothing," he said finally. "I gained everything that matters." The ocean breeze carried the scent of yellow roses, and somewhere inside, a child laughed in their sleep. The secret room had been transformed at last, not into a bigger space but into something infinite. A home where ghosts became memories, and memories became the foundation for new life. Where a monster learned to be human again, and where two people who'd found each other in darkness finally stood together in the light.